When I was in my 20s, I was a student in Toronto, and I offered to go to Vietnam because America was at war then. I was living in Canada, but I wanted to go and work with the military chaplains, and I was invited to speak. I was only in my 20s. I was invited to speak mainly to the youth or to maybe some military bases and so on, and I went there. And I'll tell you what, some amazing things happened. I was 25, my interpreter was 17, total age of 42. We were flying by American helicopters, we were on motorbikes. I was single at that time, and I said, well, if anything happens, it happens, you know. And and thousands of men and women gave their lives to Jesus Christ. I want to tell you a couple of stories with which I close, because it's amazing how these things come to be. After these thousands came to know Christ, I left and bid my interpreter, his name is Hien Pham, goodbye, and I was sure we'd never meet again. We left. 17 years later, at 11 o'clock at night, I was speaking in Vancouver, British Columbia, and my phone rang in my hotel room. I picked it up, and the voice says, Brother Rafi. I said, Hien? He said, you recognize my voice? I said, you're the only one who ever said, Brother Rafi. I said, where are you? He said, in California. I said, what? I said, what are you doing there? He said, my MBA. I said, you're in California doing your MBA? He said, yeah. I said, what happened? He said, have you got a few minutes? I said, I've got lots of minutes. He said, after you left, Vietnam fell. I was among those arrested and accused of working for the CIA. I told them I never worked for the CIA. They said, oh yeah, your English is so good, you had to be working for them. He said, no. I would interpret for guest speakers and work for the Americans, but I never worked for the CIA. He said, they wouldn't believe me, they put me in prison. They said, nobody ever admits working for the CIA, so they put him in prison. He was in a prison camp. They wouldn't allow him to read anything in English, only in Vietnamese and French. Marx and Engels, Vietnamese and French. That's it, Marx and Engels, Vietnamese and French. Finally, he said, Brother Rafi, they pounded into my head that there was no God. And one day I said, okay, I'm going to live as if there is no God. He said, that day they assigned me to clean the latrines. He said, you've never seen a latrine. He said, you thought you saw horrible latrines when you were with me? He said, you've never seen anything like this. He said, you have to tie a cloth around your nose and mouth to clean it. And I had this bucket and mop, and I was cleaning it, and I looked into one bucket next to a toilet. And I was about to empty the paper, but I noticed there was one piece of paper in English. He said, I looked around, I just quickly washed it and put it into my pocket. He said, everybody went to sleep that night. I waited, took out that wet piece of paper, and with a flashlight, I looked on that piece of paper. On the right, it said Romans chapter 8. And I started to read. And we know that all things work together for good to them that love God and that are called according to his purpose. What shall separate us from the love of God? Shall life or death or this, principalities or powers? He said, I started crying. I said, God, today I woke up in the morning saying I will never pray to you again, and now I'm holding in my hand one verse that I needed more than anything else, that all things can work together for good to them that love God. He said, I got on my knees and begged God for forgiveness. He said, I woke up in the morning and went to the commanding officer and said, do you mind if I clean the latrines again today? He said, I picked up pages from the New Testament every day. The commander had been given a Bible. He used to tear pages out of it, use it as toilet paper, and throw it into the bin. I washed it, put it into my pocket, and had my devotions at night. He said, finally, one day, they told me they were going to release me. And I was released. I got about 51 or 52 others together, including the son or daughter of the vice president, someone. We were going to build a boat to escape, and we built a boat. Several weeks went by. One day, 4 Viet Cong came knocking on my door, Brother Rafi, and said to me, "You're trying to escape, aren't you?" And he said, I looked at them, plain expression, and said, "No." They said, "Are you telling us the truth?" He said, "Yes." "You're not going to escape?" "No." "You're telling us the truth?" "Yes." He said, they left. He said, I slapped my forehead and said, "Oh my dear God, I've done it again." He said, "I prayed a prayer that I hoped would never be answered." I said, "God, forgive me, and if you want me to tell them the truth, bring them back before we escape." Hours before they were to leave, these 4 guys were back, armed to the teeth, grabbed him by the collar, rammed him against a wall. "You're lying. You're trying to escape, aren't you?" He said, "Yes, with 52 others. Are you going to kill me?" They said, "No, we want to go with you." He said, 4 of these Viet Cong came on the boat with us. He said, "Brother Rafi, on the high seas, we were in a storm, we were to capsize, but these 4 men were the best mariners we could have wanted as skippers. They finally brought us safely to Thailand. I became a refugee there and ultimately got my papers. I'm in California now doing my MBA." We flew him to my home because he wanted me to officiate at his wedding. He'd found a beautiful young Vietnamese gal he was going to marry. And he looked at my kids across the kitchen table when they were young, and he said to them, "You know, you always think you're going to manage it your own way. It never works." He said, "The most important thing in your life is to find that intimacy with God, and He will guide you, He will hold you, He will take you through safely in your journey as you walk hand in hand with Him. When everything comes together, then you have wonder, then you have truth, then you have love, and you have security. That's what gives life meaning. And you'll find that only God is big enough to do that for you." God bless you, and thank you for listening to me so carefully. Thank you.